Namaste. Haribo. My name is Janapati Das. And welcome to my second Bhagavad Gita As It Is class. We are reading from the Bhagavad Gita As It Is by my spiritual grandfather, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who translated and purported upon this Bhagavad Gita. And we are working our way through it, starting from the preface in our last class, the preface and the introduction. I'd like to offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I do have a whole section on the Krishna book of videos, about 140 videos of the whole Krishna book that I did just finished the last couple of years. It took me. It was just a wonderful, wonderful and exciting adventure to read through those and talk about those and meditate upon those. So I'd like to also offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, my guru, Jagadguru Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Prabhupada, who so mercifully has instructed me about the science of Bhagavad Gita as it is, as his Gurudev Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has instructed him. So we are so fortunate to have a translation that is authoritative and that we can comment upon and read through and meditate upon. So I would like to take this opportunity now to engage in some kirtan, hearing and chanting of Krishna's names. This is the most important activity that is instructed to us by the acharyas, by our dear Guru Devs, to in order to understand Bhagavad Gita as it is, in order to understand the words of our spiritual masters in the lineage of Gaudiya Sampradaya. And so I'd ask you please to join along and sing Krishna's names with me. We'll sing through a couple of different mantras. I wanted to praise my spiritual master and also to praise the Panchatattva, the Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, and Srivasa, and all the associates of Lord Chaitanya who propagated the chanting of Krishna's names more than 500 years ago for the fallen souls in this material world to come back to their remembrance of the relationship with Krishna. Namo Siddha Swami Ananda. table. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Omalagana Tamirandasha Gana Jana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Chasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swaram Rupa Kada Maya Madadati Svat Padantikam. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who is established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Okay, so we had started, we read through the preface and the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita. Once again, the Bhagavad Gita comes from two Sanskrit words, Bhagavan, which means the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Gita is song. So this is translated as the Song of God. So we had been reading about something kind of like preface of the preliminary referencing of the disciplic lineage of spiritual masters, of how spiritual knowledge is disseminated. And here Krishna was reminding Arjuna, Bhaktivedanta is prefacing this in the introduction, of how he reminded him that he had given this Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, there is the Bhagavad Gita at the Battle of Kurukshetra, but the Bhagavad Gita is a song of God. It is an eternal, ever continuing conversation between the living entity and the spiritual master and or Krishna, about the relationship of Krishna to the living entity. And so Bhagavad Gita, although this one is referencing within the great epic of the Mahabharata, which the Bhagavad Gita is set in, about the latter part of the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is one of the greatest epics in the world, and it's its own thing that could be probably done as a class. So I recommend you read that great epic, and this battle of Kurukshetra is towards the end. And of course, the conversation of Krishna to Arjuna is on this battlefield before the battle. So he's reminding Krishna is reminding Arjuna that he had disseminated this information about the Bhagavad Gita, about the Song of God, the spiritual bhakti yoga, spiritual knowledge, to the sun god Vivishwan. And Vivishwan and therefore there was a disciplic lineage that Krishna handed down, but then the lineage had been lost, and so Krishna is reinstating this lineage, of course. And it's really important to note, because a lot of times people will come and say that this person is a saint because they found some gold tablets in some room and they were visited by an angel and they're just some ordinary mortal. But here Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. He can reestablish a relationship, a lineage of spiritual knowledge, because he is the source of the spiritual knowledge. So somebody who is a mere mortal may not have that kind of ability to really be able to start a spiritual lineage. He tells Arjuna that he is relating the supreme secret to him because he is his devotee and his friend. This is a key, because without the devotion and putting yourself in the position of a lower position, because actually what I was stating before last class was that everyone has their own opinion, and that is the premise and the crux of this Bhagavad Gita, that we are lost in the material world, but we think we are trying to act in the position of the controller, and we are trying to be Lord. So therefore, we feel like our opinion is of the greatest importance. And this is one of Arjuna's problems, was that he fell into an illusion of thinking that his idea of what he should do on the battle, with the battle of Kurukshetra, was the better opinion. But he did put himself in a position as a disciple. He asked that question. He was saying, I can't do this one, but then he was saying, what should I do? So he was putting himself in that position. And you will find that in the means of bhakti yoga, in the Srimad Bhagavatam and so many things, you find this knowledge being handed down in this relationship between the spiritual master to student. The knowledge is being handed down. So it is said in the Bhagavad Gita itself that mere speculative knowledge cannot come to understand the absolute truth, and Krishna is the absolute truth. So this is what a lot of what our philosophy and psychology and everything else is based on, speculative knowledge, which is what I think. So, but the Bhagavad Gita and Bhakti Yoga is not about what I think. It's actually learning the absolute truth from, in a humble position, from a spiritual master. So once again, as I was saying, this class, everything I've learned from my spiritual master, and I'm trying to repeat what he's taught me without putting my own coloring or interpretation on this. And this is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And so here Arjuna is a devotee and a friend. He's open, he's receiving this information. You cannot really, this sort of empirical knowledge debate, I guess you could say, the debate about what is the truth. It's not a debate. That's not how you should be assimilating. You should be giving knowledge to people who are receptive or partially receptive, not trying to hit them over the head with like spiritual knowledge so that they will win. Because we've seen this in everything that's about social media, about politics or whatever, that most cases, most people are not convinced, even when they've been defeated in a debate. They hold on to their belief systems and whatnot. So this is a different thing altogether that we're talking about. Krishna is able to tell Arjuna and transmit the spiritual knowledge to Arjuna because Arjuna is receptive and willing to consider and apply these things in his life. This is what Bhakti Yoga is about. The purport of this is that Bhagavad Gita is a treatise which is especially meant for the devotee of the Lord. There are three classes of transcendentalists, namely the Jnani, the Yogi, and the Bhakta, or the impersonalist, the meditator, and the devotee. Here, sorry, when I said that, Jnani, Yoga, and the Bhakti are the impersonalist, meditator, and the devotee. So it wasn't that the Bhakta was the impersonalist. Here the Lord clearly tells Arjuna that he is making him the first receiver of a new parampara, disciplic succession. So parampara is one after another, right? This is a lineage of spiritual masters that we will read eventually when we get to the end of this introduction. Because the old succession was broken, it was the Lord's wish, therefore, to establish another parampara in the same line of thought that was coming down from the sun god to others. And it was his wish that his teaching he distributed anew by Arjuna. He wanted Arjuna to become the authority in understanding the Bhagavad Gita. So we see that Bhagavad Gita is instructed to Arjuna, especially because Arjuna was a devotee of the Lord, a direct student of Krishna, and his intimate friend. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita is best understood by a person who has the qualities similar to Arjuna's. That is to say, he must be a devotee in a direct relationship with the Lord. As soon as one becomes a devotee of the Lord, he has a direct relationship with the Lord. That is very elaborate subject matter, but briefly it can be stated that a devotee is in a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one of 5 different ways. 1. One may be a devotee in a passive state. 2. One may be a devotee in an active state. 3. One may be a devotee as a friend. Number 4. One may be a devotee as a parent. Number 5. One may be a devotee as a conjugal lover. So these are the subject matters of rasas, or relationships that the living entity are in with Krishna, and it's a very deep and complex, so we won't touch on it too much right now, but just we'll go with what we have, and we'll be covering some of that in the Bhagavad Gita, and we'll talk more about it as we go along. Arjuna, I think there was reference, of course, that in the Krishna book, if you go back in my videos, and that because we see that a lot of the devotees are in different relationships with Krishna and his stories. Some are in parental relationships, some are in friend relationship or servant relationship, or even conjugal relationship, like the gopis or the queens. Arjuna was in a relationship with the Lord as friend. Arjuna and Krishna were cousins, and so they were also very close friends. And so, of course, there is a gulf of difference between this friendship and the friendship found in the material world. This is transcendental friendship, which cannot be had by everyone. A main point, of course, that we have to differentiate between the relationships, a material relationship, and there are material relationships in servant, friend, parent, and conjugal love in the material world, but the outcome is a different thing, because usually the outcome is, what do I get out of this relationship? And this one is, what can I give to Krishna in this relationship? So they're same kind of things, different outcome and different central focus. This transcendental friendship, which cannot be had by everyone. Of course, everyone has a particular relationship with the Lord, but that relationship is evoked by the perfection of devotional service. But in that present status of our life, we have not only forgotten the Supreme Lord, but we have forgotten our eternal relationship with the Lord. And hence the Bhagavad Gita, which is also this remembering of our relationship to Krishna. Every living being out of many, many billions and trillions of living beings has a particular relationship with the Lord eternally. So that's very amazing. You know, we can only have so many relationships with people, and then we get spread thin. You know, it's like we have our parents and our whatnot in this life. But Krishna has a relationship with every living being. You can't even imagine that. I mean, just alone in the 5-mile radius that I live in, there are thousands of living entities in human bodies. How many in bird bodies, or cat bodies, or dog bodies, or amoeba bodies, or worms, and trees, and plants, and things that you cannot see, and things in living entities and other dimensional kind of aspects. So many, and Krishna has a personal relationship with each and every one of them. Everyone. That's why it is said that Krishna is our Father, is our dearest friend. Everyone. He can have a relationship with all living entities simultaneously, having a different relationship. We cannot do that with everyone else. Okay, so the relationship with God, Lord, eternally, that is called Swarup. By the process of devotional service, one can revive that Swarup, and that stage is called Swarup Siddhi, the perfection of one's constitutional position. So Arjuna was a devotee, and he was in touch with the Supreme Lord in friendship. How Arjuna accepted this Bhagavad Gita should be noted. His manner of acceptance is given in the 10th chapter. So here we have some more Sanskrit. Arjuna uvacha param brahman paradama pavitram paramam bhavan parusham shashvatam divyam adidevam ajam vibhum Ahustvam Rashaha Sarve Devarshir Naradashtata Ashita Devalo Vaishaya Svayam Treva Bravishime Sarva Eta Ratamane Yanmam Vadashi Keshava Nahite Bhagavan Vakim Vidur Devana Danavaha. Arjuna said, "You are the supreme Brahman, the ultimate, the supreme abode and purifier, the absolute truth in the eternal divine person. You are the primal God, transcendental and original, and you are the unborn and all-pervading beauty. All the great sages like Narada, Ashita, Devala, Vyasa proclaim this of you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me. O Krishna, I totally accept as truth all that you have told me. Neither the gods nor demons, O Lord, know thy personality." Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 12 to 14. After hearing Bhagavad Gita from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Arjuna accepted Krishna as Para Brahman, the Supreme Brahman. Every living being is Brahman, but the Supreme Living Being, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Brahman. Param Dhamma means that he is the supreme rest or abode of everything. So Dhamma is a place, where we have Vrindavan Dham, right? The area of a Vrindavan. In this case, Para Brahman is that Krishna is the rest or abode of everything. So everything we strive for, everything we do, everything that we act for is actually in the attempt to try to approach and come back to this Paradhamma. Even though most cases we are faultly looking in the wrong direction to think, as they say, looking for love in all the wrong places. We are actually trying to reinstate the supreme rest in abode, because everyone wants to rest, and we just feel like we're constantly going. We're just looking for that rest, and we just keep trying the things, the little suckers, like licking the outside of a honey bottle. We are always trying to, that's going to make me have some rest, or make me feel I've come home to this point. But we never really are satisfied. It never happens. Pavrita means that he is pure, untainted by material contamination. Purusham means that he is a supreme enjoyer. Divyam, a transcendental. Adidevam, the supreme personality of Godhead. Ajam, the unborn. And Vibhum, the greatest and the all-pervading. Now one may think that because Krishna was a friend of Arjuna, Krishna was telling him all this by way of flattery. But Arjuna, just to drive out this kind of doubt from the minds of the readers of the Bhagavad Gita, substantiates these praises in the next verse when he says that Krishna is accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not only by himself, but by authorities like the sage Narada, Ashita, Devala, Vyasadeva, and so on. These are great personalities who distribute the Vedic knowledge as it is, accepted by all acharyas. Therefore, Arjuna tells Krishna that he accepts whatever he says to be completely perfect. Sarvam etam retam manye, I accept everything you say to be true. Arjuna also says that the personality of the Lord is very difficult to understand, and that he cannot be known even by the great demigods. This means that the Lord cannot even be known by personalities greater than human beings. So how can a human being understand Sri Krishna without becoming his devotee? So that is a major point. When it is said in the Bhagavad Gita that mental speculators cannot come to know Krishna or the absolute truth, the best that they can do is the Brahman realization of Krishna. And then Krishna, or God, is really realized in three features. Brahman, or the great ocean of white light, which a lot of times people, they achieve maybe through some drug taking of psychedelics, or they do chanting of like the Native American, and they experience this great ocean of light, or they speculate and contemplate until they've actually received this knowledge. But to understand higher, such as Paramatma, which is the Lord in the heart. It used to be that yogis would do that kind of meditation in previous ages, that the Lord is expanded into our heart in all living beings and all atoms. But that above that is actually Bhagavan, which comes from Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his form, Satchitananda Vigraha, the eternal form of bliss and knowledge. And we also, in our spiritual form, our Satchitananda Vigraha, we also have a spiritual form of bliss, eternality, and knowledge, true knowledge, eternal knowledge, absolute truth knowledge. So, but we, in our minute portion, we are not the supreme, but we are of the same energy as the supreme. So this is also important, that that Krishna cannot be known in so many different ways except through devotion. And this is what the premise of the Bhagavad Gita is, what we've been talking about. To come and to understand Krishna and the absolute truth and our relationship with Krishna, we have to humbly approach the spiritual master, who is the representative of Sri Krishna. And this is also stated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 34, where Krishna says, just try to understand the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Humbly, I'm going to paraphrase it, of course. Humbly approach him and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge to you because they have seen the truth from their own spiritual master, and so on in the disciplic lineage. So this is how, through this devotion to our spiritual master in Krishna, is the only way we can understand Bhagavad Gita and thus come to understand our relationship in love with Krishna. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita should be taken up in a spirit of devotion. This is what Bhakti Yoga means. Bhakti is devotion, or love and devotion to Krishna. And yoga is the connection, reinstating our connection with Krishna through bhakti, through the devotion. And of course, when we come into the material world and we try to reinstate our relationship with Krishna, we have been conditioned by being in the material world. We are not our body, we are not our mind, and this will be stated in as we get into the Bhagavad Gita. But we still have a lot of desires to lord and control in this material world, and therefore we are given by our spiritual master the instructions to practice sadhana bhakti, which, because we don't have the devotion there, is covered up so much. We are going through the process of practicing the means of bhakti yoga, the chanting the rounds, chanting our japa, chanting the kirtan, reading scripture, so many different ways, 9 processes of devotional service in practice, that we can cleanse our heart and be able to understand deeper and appreciate more. So we uncover the true bhakti yoga. Lord Sri Krishna, so one should not think that he is equal to Krishna, nor should he think that Krishna is an ordinary personality or a very great personality. Lord Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, at least theoretically, according to the statements of the Bhagavad Gita or the statements of Arjuna, the person who's trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita. So this is the problem with why we have the Bhagavad Gita as it is, because a lot of these people, they think that it's all one. They're teaching monism or impersonalism, that Krishna is just a great white light of this Brahman effulgence, that and it's manifesting as Krishna, who is a very important historical figure or character, and that the impersonal Brahman is speaking through Krishna, all kinds of crazy stuff, or that is some abstract archetype that has to do with something in our personalities as humans. It's just like a lot of nonsense stuff, and that's why we don't read every Bhagavad Gita. We study the Bhagavad Gita as it is, because that's what it is. It's about Krishna, and Krishna is a real personality, and not just he is certainly a great historical personality, but he is also the supreme personality of Godhead. So we should therefore at least theoretically accept Sri Krishna as the supreme personality of God, and with that submissive spirit we can understand the Bhagavad Gita. Unless one reads the Bhagavad Gita in a submissive spirit, it is very difficult to understand Bhagavad Gita, because it is a great mystery. It is a great mystery, and that's why people misunderstand it. They misunderstand it. Why it's very important to have a guide to show you what the map means, because so many people can interpret things coming from their own mind and say, well, I think this map means to go this way, and this is what it really means. But it's kind of an interesting scenario, because there is a certain amount of trust, and this is why Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us a very easy process, an attractive process in this age of Kali, because we knew that in this age living entities would be living a very short life of just kind of stupidity. We're pretty stupid, and we're not capable of focusing for very long. We cannot really, we do really stupid things. We're very crass and immoral. We can't, the religion is kind of going out the window. There are more and more atheists. So we're given a very simple process. Just come and chant Krishna's names. It's so much fun, and you can get a little taste, and when you get the taste, then you're like, oh, this is actually really fun. And that's the cleansing agent, as Lord Chaitanya says. It cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years together. It gives you a taste for which you are always anxious. So we're always anxious, but we don't understand. So once we have the taste from Kirtan, then we're able to hear more and more that we chant. We're able to hear from the Lord in our heart the Bhagavad Gita, the message of the Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, it's just a mystery. When we don't read you can read the Bhagavad Gita from a very mental sort of perspective. You may never get it. I've known people that I've chanted for so many years, and they said that when they first read the Bhagavad Gita or any of these scriptures, they just couldn't understand it, So there is a certain element of like, okay, we chant and we trust because we were tasting something. And the more that we trust and the more that we try to apply, the more we can see that it is actually the absolute truth. Just what is the Bhagavad Gita? The purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is to deliver mankind from the nescience of material existence. Every man is in difficulty in so many ways, as Arjuna also was in difficulty in having to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. So Arjuna was it's a very wonderful thing to read about Arjuna in the Mahabharata and all these things, but actually this beauty of the Bhagavad Gita is that it represents also all of everyone's relationship with Krishna and everyone's difficulty and struggle within the material world to come to know the absolute truth, to want to know the meanings of like, who am I? What is the purpose of my life? Why when I try everything that they've told me that will make me happy just does not make me happy? Why is that? What happens when I die? Is there a God? What happens? All these things. What are the ways? What are the means? How do I do this? Otherwise, we are left with speculation, and speculation is I can relate to that because before I started chanting, I used to read all kinds of books, and you can just sit with people, the coffee, the armchair, what they call it, the armchair philosophers, and you sit there and you debate and you sit around and you're like, ooh, this is gonna, and not to be crude on this, but that's just what we call mental masturbation or circle jerk. I probably get banned on YouTube for saying things like that. But that's what it is. It's just like, let me tell you let me do gymnastics in my brain to try to speculate about what the absolute truth is. So it's very exhausting to do a lot of gymnastics in your brain. It's better to have a very straightforward process. And this is why you have this process. It's very straightforward. If you follow it, you'll get to your destination. Every man is in difficulty in so many ways, as Arjuna was also in difficulty in having to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. That was a major thing to have to do. Arjuna surrendered unto Sri Krishna, and consequently this Bhagavad Gita was spoken. We think our life is tough. Imagine having to go into a battle where millions of people are fighting, and you're killing people every day. You're fighting and trying to survive. I mean, a battle, a serious battle. Arjuna surrendered unto Sri Krishna, and consequently this Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Not only Arjuna, but every one of us is full of anxieties because of this material existence. Yes. Our very existence is in the atmosphere of non-existence. We are not meant to be threatened by non-existence. Our existence is eternal, but somehow or other we are put into a sat. A sat refers to that which does not exist. So sat is a word that means eternal. It references us, the living entities, as being eternal, which is stated when we get into chapter 2. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you nor all these kings, as Krishna tells Arjuna. He states that we have always existed. It's not as a matter of asat. A lot of people believe this asat, that we are not eternal, that we come into being when we are so-called created. A lot of religious people are like that too. Christians and whatnot, they're like, we didn't exist before, we are created, and then when we die, I guess it's like we go to hell, and I think our soul probably goes there. Then it's confusing, or we go to heaven, and then we might go live for eternity or be damned for eternity. But so not really correct, actually, in its philosophy. But no, we've always existed. So that is really tricky to kind of understand with a temporary mind, that it has a beginning and does also have an end. So our mind, our body, these energies, they do have a beginning and an end. We do not. Therefore, this is the crux of the problem. We are in a temporary situation, but we are eternal, and therefore we are trying to find something of eternal bliss and understanding and knowledge and happiness, and we cannot find it anywhere in this material world. That is the problem. So here, yes, asat means that which does not exist. Out of so many human beings who are suffering, there are a few who are actually inquiring about the position. So there are some people who are inquiring. Some people don't really know. They are inquiring, but they're speculating. Everybody knows they have to die, but I think most people kind of like shove it over to the side because they don't really have an answer for it. They don't. I mean, even atheists who are like, oh, you just die and that's it. And they're, oh, I'm okay with that, but no. They're okay with it while they're alive, but when they are experiencing it, no. That's why it's said there are no atheists on the deathbed, because once they see what they're going through, then they're praying to God after that. Out of so many human beings who are suffering, okay, so we go. As to what there are a few who are actually inquiring about the position, as to what they are, why they are put into this awkward position, and so on. Unless one is awakened to this position of questioning and suffering, unless he realizes that he doesn't want suffering, but rather wants to make a solution to all sufferings, then one is not to be considered a perfect human being. Humanity begins when this sort of inquiry is awakened in one's mind. So otherwise, as Bhaktivedanta says, you're just a polished animal. Animals, they eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Humans eat, sleep, mate, and defend, but they also have the propensity to inquire about but a lot of people don't do that because it's just they're like too much engaged in carnivals, and it's like Pinocchio. They go into this carnival where everybody, right? They're just into that, and then they like, oh, I'll just put off dealing with like how I'm gonna leave my body later when I can be spiritual. Well, that doesn't work out too well. We get caught up in material life, and before you know it, or even before you know it, you don't necessarily have to be 90 years old to die. Sometimes it may just come on really quickly, and then you're just faced with it. Humanity begins when this sort of inquiry is awakened in one's mind. So truly, that's what human life is supposed to be for. In the Brahma Sutra, this inquiry is called Brahma Jignasha. Every activity of the human being is to be considered a failure unless he inquires about the nature of the Absolute. Therefore, those who begin to question why they are suffering or where they came from or where they shall go after death are proper students for understanding Bhagavad Gita. The sincere student should also have a firm respect for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a student was Arjuna. So this is a really great treatise for understanding those things, because as my spiritual master has said, there are so many achievements that we have in life. Sometimes we're capable of making money, sometimes we're capable of having great talents in the arts, or we're a great speaker, or we have a lot of property, or we have a really beautiful wife, or we're just very handsome, and it goes on and on and on. You collect so many kinds of things, but my Guru Deva said that these things are like zeros in of themselves. They do not really give you any kind of real success in your life unless you put the one in front of the zero, and then they're very valuable. So the one, of course, is the absolute truth, is Sri Krishna. Once all those things can be used in the service of Krishna, and then you have great value of things. Because what is the use of having a lot of money, or having a great wife, or having great talents, if you're just trying to get ahead in life only to die at the end of your life? You're like, well, I lived a good life, I influenced people. It's not really of any purpose, because it's just temporary. Whereas when you engage in the service of Krishna, that's eternal. That continues on. Therefore, those who begin to question, okay, I read that already. Lord Krishna descends specifically to reestablish the real purpose of life when man forgets that purpose. Even then, out of many, many human beings who awaken, there may be one who actually enters the spirit of understanding his position. And for him, this Bhagavad Gita is spoken. So there may be a lot of people speculating about why they're going to die and whatnot, but they don't actually approach this Bhagavad Gita for knowledge, which is really unfortunate. Actually, we are all followed by the tiger of nescience. But the Lord is very merciful upon living entities, especially human beings. To this end, he spoke the Bhagavad Gita, making his friend Arjuna his student. Being an associate of Lord Krishna, Arjuna was above all ignorance, but Arjuna was put into ignorance on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to question Lord Krishna about the problems of life so that the Lord could explain them for the benefit of future generations of human beings and chalk out the plan of life. Then man could act accordingly and perfect the mission of human life. So here we go. Arjuna, a great saint, this is something that we're wondering why Arjuna, this amazing warrior and spiritual student, just way beyond what anybody is today, put into ignorance about whether he should do what Krishna is asking him to do. And here we see that he was put into ignorance to set an example, because as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, what great men do, common men will follow. So this is, we've read the Christian book, and we've seen examples of the way that Krishna is kind of doing things that, as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, he doesn't need to do rules and regulations, kinds of fire sacrifices and worship of the demigods and whatnot. All these kinds of different things, ways to respect great saints, and he doesn't need to do that. But he does it as to set an example for the common men to be able to follow. The subject of the Bhagavad Gita entails the comprehension of 5 basic truths. First of all, the science of God is explained, then the constitutional position of the living entities, jivas. There is Ishvara, which means controller, and there are jivas, the living entity which are controlled. If the living entity says that he is not controlled but that he is free, then he is insane. It's like, Krishna says, even the great saints, they're like, talk about, you gotta, it's like Bob Dylan says, you gotta serve somebody. There's like song, it could be God or it could be the devil, but you gotta serve someone, right? That great song. It's so true. You've gotta serve somebody. And in this case, you're gonna be serving God directly or indirectly. You're either going to serve God through devotional service of surrendering your life to God, or if you try to live for yourself and yourself only, you are still indirectly serving the energies of God, because that everything belongs to God. So we have, of course, the Maya Devi, the illusory energy of the material that influences the living entity. But a lot of people are thinking, I'm just on my own. I've got my own trip, yeah, okay. So that's that, so this is the subject of so where was I? The living being is controlled in every respect, at least in his conditioned life. The living being, in the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matter deals with Ishvara, the supreme controller, the jivas, the controlled living entities, prakriti, material nature, and time, the duration of existence of the whole universe, are the manifestation of material nature, and karma, activity, are also discussed. This is a very packed full of a lot of information. The cosmic manifestation is full of different activities. All living entities are engaged in different activities. From Bhagavad Gita, we must learn what God is, what the living entities, what prakriti is, what the cosmic manifestation is, and how it is controlled by time, and what the activities of the living entities are. So this goes way beyond most speculation, of who we are. You have to understand, not just who we are and what is material nature, what is the subtle material nature, what is spiritual energy, what is God, what is time, how does karma come into play of all this. There's so much information that clearly is explained through the guidance of a spiritual master, that clearly and succinctly explains what is. You don't have to think about it or whatever. I mean, it's good you can think about it, but it's you don't have to try to figure it out yourself. Out of these 5 basic subject matters in Bhagavad Gita, it is established that the Supreme Godhead, or Krishna, or Brahman, or Supreme Controller, or Paramatma, you may use whatever name you like, is the greatest of all. So these 3 aspects of Krishna, they are Krishna. They're different aspects of Krishna. So it's not like they're 3 different people. The living beings are in quality like the Supreme Controller. For instance, the Lord has control over the universal affairs, over material nature, etc., as will be explained in the later chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Material nature is not independent. She is acting under the directions of the Supreme Lord. As Lord Krishna says, Prakriti is working under my direction. When we see wonderful things happening in the cosmic nature, we should know that behind this cosmic manifestation, there is a controller. So that is that ever debate between, is there a controller or not? Yes, there is a controller. Nothing could be manifested without being controlled. It is childish not to consider the controller. For instance, a child may think that an automobile is quite wonderful to be able to run without a horse or other animal pulling it, but a sane man knows the nature of the automobile's engineering arrangement. He also knows that behind the machinery there is a man, a driver. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is a driver under whose direction everything is working. So similarly, now we have self-driving cars. So people may be saying, well, you don't have a driving car. But behind the driving techno, there was someone who designed that ability to have a self-driving car that does that. Now the jivas, or the living entities, have been accepted by the Lord, as we will note in the later chapters, as his parts and parcels. A particle of gold is also gold. A drop of water from the ocean is also salty. And similarly, we, the living entities, being part and parcel of the Supreme Controller, Ishvara, or Bhagavan, Lord Sri Krishna, have all the qualities of the Supreme Lord in minute quantity, because we are minute Ishvaras, subordinate Ishvaras. So we are controllers of our own means, you know. We do control things. We control our life. We sometimes are in positions of being CEOs or in charge of things. We might be head of a household. So we have these tendencies, but we are not in charge of everything. We are trying to control nature. Yes, we are trying to control things in our society and in our countries and our cities, to have organization, to be able to try to enjoy. We have that controlling tendencies. And this tendency to control is there because it is in Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Controller. Therefore, we also have the tendency to want to control. But we can make a choice. We have to understand that, you know, we are either going to be perceived controllers, supreme controllers, or attempted supreme controllers, or we're going to be servants of Krishna. We are trying to control nature, and thus presently we're trying to control space and planets. This is a tendency to control is there because it is in Krishna, right? Although we have the tendency to lord over material nature, we should know that we are not the supreme controller. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita. So this is the problem of why we find ourselves lost in the material world, because of this desire that has overcome us, that we've chosen to take being the perceived supreme controller. But we cannot all be supreme controllers. There is one supreme controller, Sri Krishna. See how we're doing here? Okay. So we're going to continue on through this introduction goes on for a little while, so it may be a few videos that we go through this. I think this introduction might be even longer than the Krishna book. I'll read one more paragraph. Prakriti itself is constituted by three qualities: the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance, which is also talked about in the Bhagavad Gita. Above these modes there is eternal time, and by the combination of these modes of nature and under the control and purview of eternal time, there are activities which are called karma. So just quickly, karma is not something that it's not like you're going to get karma. It's like something that happened. It is an activity that is taken on by the living entity, and we'll get into that more. So this is very complicated. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the creation of the universe is explained, and there's a whole story about how Lord Brahma creates the universe and what all these things that come into the universe and influence the living entity while they're present within the universe in an embodied state, how controlled they are. And the greatest joke is that they think that they're free. They think that they have freedom of whatever, but they are so controlled by everything that goes on around them, and their own body is controlling them. It's pretty amazing. So these activities are being carried out from time immemorial, and we are suffering or enjoying the fruits of our activities. So we have the karmic reaction, right? So our activities have fruits. For instance, suppose I am a businessman and have worked very hard with intelligence and have amassed a great bank balance. then I am an enjoyer. But then, say I've lost my money in business, then I am a sufferer. Similarly, in every field of life, we enjoy the results of our work and we suffer the results. This was called karma. So we're going to get more into karma. There's chapters about karma yoga and what that is and how that relates to the activities that we do. There's more stuff to go through in this introduction, but we are going to call it for the day. Thank you very much. And since we've kind of reached about an hour, we will just end the class tonight. Namaste.